We wanted to travel full-time for 1 year with our toddler. Therefore, we needed to make a plan to save some money.
But how much money is enough? Therefore, for months, we researched the internet, ran spreadsheets, and came up with a magic number, 4,000 Australian dollars per month.
For 1 whole year, we meticulously noted down every single expenses.
And in this video, we're gonna break down the true cost of traveling full-time as a family for 1 year. Watch till the very end because the final result might completely surprise you.
For those who don't know us, we are Nabeel and Zenesta, and we are a location-independent family with a simple goal of creating a freedom-based online business while we slow travel the world. Before we get into the video, let's get some things out of the way. We are going to talk about all the expenses in Australian dollar. However, we will put also other currencies for you in the caption.
So as you know, our budget was 4,000 Australian dollars per month. That makes it $48,000 a year, another $12,000 as contingency, making it $60,000 that we actually saved.
Number one, we are going to provide the cost in 10 different categories. For number two,
we're going to be providing the overall cost per country. And lastly, we're going to give you just the overall cost that we had across all categories.
Accommodation is our biggest expense. It is about 23% of our whole expense budget. On average, we spent about 945 Australian dollars per month.
Now, a couple of things for you to consider. Our costs when it comes to accommodation was a little bit higher than, say, someone who were going to stay in that particular location for a longer period of time, because you've got to pay a little bit more when you are doing short-term rentals for 2 to 3 months. And the other thing is we always chose to live in expat locations because that's where we got all the services that we wanted, including the schools for our daughter.
And as a result, we have to pay premium prices.
Just one tip, always try to look at Facebook expat groups for that particular city or location, because you will be surprised that you could save a lot of money directly renting from a landlord as opposed to going through Airbnb or Booking.com.
The second category is food and groceries. It consists about 20% of our overall expenses. Now for this category, we have spent about $829 per month.
One of the best parts about living in Southeast Asia is the food. And believe it or not, sometimes it's actually cheaper to eat outside than to actually cook at home. And that's exactly what we did. Although not always the best option, but that's exactly what we did. So this cost includes groceries, takeout, eat-in, takeaway, everything.
Yes. This is the third most biggest expense, which is our child's school. This is about 15% of our overall expense. And on average, we spent about 637 Australian dollars per month.
Now, a lot of parents choose to homeschool their kids, and that's completely fine. Everyone knows what's best for their kids. But for us, we wanted to send her to international preschools because we were actually, and still are, building a business. So we didn't feel we could do justice to both, homeschooling her as well as work on the business itself. So we felt like this basically worked out the best. Even though it cost us a lot of money, we just felt like this was the best thing for us.
And I think on top of that, we wanted her to have experience with kids of her own age, and we wanted to have that interpersonal skills and have that communication skills developed. We spent about 9% of our cost in flights and visa, which comes down to about $358 per month.
Now, we traveled quite a lot. We went to 5 different countries, and within those countries, we traveled as well. And the reason why the cost of this travel is actually quite low is because we used a lot of points, loyalty points that we built up over a period of time. So you'll be surprised how much money you can save.
When we were planning to budget for this whole travel, obviously you need to figure out how much the expenses would be, and based on that you would need to figure out how much you need to save to do that. And we've been saving up for almost 1 year to do this travel. Now for that, we created a calculator for ourselves to calculate this whole budget thing. If you're interested, I'll put a link of that travel budget calculator in the description so you can go and have a look at it for yourself for your future travels. So in each country that we've been to, we normally based ourselves for 2 to 3 months. And these transportation cost includes the bus ride, the train rides, the ride sharing.
Yeah, so this is all for our day-to-day lives, right? Like going from A to B. Like this is not like big flights and things like that. This is just day-to-day transportation.
Yeah. And this is about 6% of our total expense. And on average, we spend about $241 per month on transportation.
One of the things I do want to say is it's been like eye-opening, like the transportation options that you have in Southeast Asia. Like prior to coming, like we had some different perspective, thought it was a little bit backwards, but in some cases, actually in a lot of cases, it's way more advanced and a lot more options that you would expect in some Western countries. I mean, especially with Australia, I can say, the transportation system in Southeast Asia
is much more superior than in Australia. 110%.
And on top of that, it's very reasonable, which makes it amazing. Now, this category is different to transportation. Transportation was more like day-to-day activities, but this is all about the travel. So obviously we're doing this gap year to set up a business, create the time, but we also wanted to travel as well within the country and, visit the different places. So this is all about that, plane rides, bus rides, and all those sort of domestic long-haul things that we have to do as far as travel is concerned.
And this was about 6% of our total expense. And on average, we spent about $242 per month.
With this category as well, we used a lot of loyalty points. Like I'll give an example. We went to Bali and stayed at the Intercontinental Hotel, which is a resort, and it was amazing. And we spent around 10% of what the actual cost would have been for like 6 or 7 night stay. And that was like around 6,000 Australian dollars. So we saved so much over there. So I can't emphasize on the importance of a loyalty program, and it helps so much.
The seventh category is entertainment, and we spent about 4% of our total expenses. So on average, that comes down to about $156 per month.
So this is all about, the day trips we took, the tours we took, like in Thailand and everywhere else, like movies, stand-up comedy, any kind of entertainment, like, Yara going to indoor play areas and things like that. So that's what.
Elephant rides, whatever it is.
Whatever it is, so this is all around the entertainment bucket.
Fitness and health took about 4% of our total expense. Now, this is something that you will have to budget for because, believe it or not, you will get sick and you would need to pay from your pocket. So on average, we spent about 165 Australian dollar per month.
Yeah, other than doctor visits that you just mentioned, this also includes like gym memberships and things like that. So obviously we did have travel insurance that we got from Australia, but sometimes what happens is that it doesn't meet the threshold sort of claim back. So yeah, we haven't actually had to claim anything.
Yes. One of the important reasons why we are doing this whole gap year is to build our own online business. And because of that, obviously, while we are traveling and looking at new places, we also had to work. And having a co-working space was very important for us. And we tried to take one wherever we could. Now, this amounted to about 2% of our total expenses, which is not a lot, really. And on average, we spent about $75 per month.
In some places, like say, for example, in Vietnam, we actually had a pretty nice house and it had a pretty good space for us to work. So we decided not to take a co-working space there. So it's not like we took it everywhere, but we took it wherever we could. And some of the most amazing people we met were from co-working spaces.
Shifting from an employee to a self-employed is obviously a big mindset shift, a big habit shift, and we wanted to give ourselves the best chance for that. And so we thought that this is a very important thing that we need to consider. Now we are to the last category, which is miscellaneous. Basically includes anything and everything.
That didn't fall in the other 9 categories.
Yes, and this amounted to about 12% of our total expenses. And on average, we spent about $511 per month.
It includes everything from SIM cards to Yara taking a haircut, you taking a haircut, us buying clothes.
Personal items, yes.
Personal items, laundries as well.
So we had nanny in Indonesia, and then we had cleaners in all the different countries.
Yeah, so it's everything else.
So now let's look at it by country in terms of how much we've spent per month in each country. Now, as we've said earlier, we've been in 5 countries. So the first one is Malaysia.
So in Malaysia, we spent 3 months, and on an average per month, we spent $4,403. And it was great value for money because it was the beginning. We were excited. We traveled like crazy. We did like things as much as we could, and then it was still like great value for money.
Second country is Thailand, and this is by far the most expensive country of all
that we have visited. So in Thailand, we lived there for 2 months, and we lived in Bangkok, and that obviously didn't help because we were kind of shocked how expensive Bangkok was compared to some of the other places that we visited. So on average, we spent around $5,647 per month. But then again, Thailand is an amazing country. It's got some great, places to visit. Like we went to Phuket and did all those island hopping tours, which was extremely memorable. Some things that we will never forget. And, those come with a price tag, right? But I think we wouldn't do it any other way. I think we were very happy to have done those.
Yeah, and I think instead of staying in Bangkok, had we lived in Chiang Mai, it would have been much more affordable.
Yeah, and we did research Chiang Mai, but unfortunately at that time we couldn't find a school for Yara that we liked. But who knows, maybe with the knowledge that we have today, if we go back to Thailand again, we will definitely look at Chiang Mai a lot more seriously than we did last time.
Yeah, you never know. The third country is Vietnam, and this is by far the least expensive country for us.
So in Vietnam, we stayed for 3 months, and on average we spent around $4,053 per month.
The highlight for this Vietnam stay was that for 1 week, we traveled with my side of the family in northern Vietnam, and it was one of the best experiences that I had.
And the weather was great too. We went in January, and it wasn't rainy or anything, so it was pretty good weather. Fourth country that we visited was Indonesia. We lived in Jakarta for 2 months, and on average, we spent around 4,240 Australian dollars. For me, the highlight was that we spent a week in Bali, like relaxing and just having a great time as us as a family bonding. And also in Jakarta, Yara went to a school, the New Zealand International School, and that was by far the best school that I personally feel she has been to, like in terms of facilities, schools, etc. And that was a great experience that we had. Okay, so the fifth and last country that we visited as part of our gap year was Bangladesh, which is our home country. Now, obviously, it's not in Southeast Asia, it's in South Asia, but we took an opportunity to actually go and visit our home country for 2 months, something that we haven't had the opportunity to do before, because usually we were able to go to Bangladesh, 1 or 2 weeks every, year or 2 years. Like it wasn't consistent at all.
So on average, we spent about $1,791 per month, which is a steal.
Now you might think, wow, Bangladesh is so cheap, but actually it's not. It's actually pretty expensive, sometimes more expensive than some of these other countries that we visit.
The only reason why it's cheap is because we stayed with our parents, so we didn't have to pay for accommodation, and our parents gladly fed us every single day. So we didn't have to pay for food, except for sometimes when we went out to have food in restaurants with our friends and family, just certain times, but mostly you had to pay nothing for accommodation and food.
Yeah, I mean, we did pay for a co-working space. I mean, Yara did go to school for a couple of months, so we did pay for that. So so there were some expenses, but it wasn't like we didn't have to pay like a whole bunch of big expenses, so that really saved us that way. And there is no right or wrong way of doing an adult gap year. You basically figure out what works best for you. In fact, I think going to Bangladesh and staying during December when the time is great and attending weddings and things like that, it's just been like an amazing experience.
It's a no-brainer for us. And given that we're doing this gap year, if we don't take this opportunity, it would be a great miss. And we didn't want to let go of this opportunity.
Exactly.
So before we go to the big overall expense, 2 things to consider. Number 1, we planned for $4,000 per month, which is about $48,000 a year. And then we added an additional $12,000 for contingency in case something happens, we need more money. So bearing that in mind, here's the grand total.
All right, so overall for 12 months, we spent $53,577, which comes down to around $4,463 a month. So we were over budget by $5,557 for the entire year, which comes down to around $463 per month. Now, here's where the important thing to remember is that we had that contingency of $12,000. When you take the contingency into consideration, we were actually under budget by $6,500, but we were able to use that money into our second gap year, which is what we're doing. Now, looking back, all those months months ago when we were planning and we were thinking, I mean, I wish this $4,000 that we came up with, that magic number, are we actually right? Will we be right or wrong? Because there was no way for us to say for sure whether we're going to make it or not. There were so many variables. We hadn't done this before. We were doing it with a kid. There were just so many question marks. So looking back, a variance of like, just over 10% being out, I think we did pretty well.
Yeah.
Like, going up and down, like making adjustments through the process. And yeah, I think like overall it's been pretty good.
It's really not bad. For doing this adult gap year, when we were in Sydney, we were spending about $11,000 per month.
Yeah.
In comparison to that,
Sometimes more.
sometimes more obviously, but in comparison to that, spending $4,000 to $4,500 per month, it's almost like
1/3.
we're making money by spending money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's just absurd. And this is only possible because of currency hacking, which is earning in a higher currency value and spending your money in a lower currency value,
Yeah.
which is all over Southeast Asia where we have spent.
Exactly, and that is how we created time, because sometimes it's really hard when you've got a full-time job and you want to do something on the side. It just feels like it's not progressing enough because we are not able to put in as much time as we want, simply because, life gets in the way. So this was our way of, creating time so that we can put all of them into creating this business. One of the things I will end with is some people have told us, and with good intentions, that what we're doing is really reckless. It's irresponsible, especially with a child, letting go of a career that we've built over all these years. When I look back after this 1 year, I just feel like us as a family, we are closer together, just purely because of the time we got together and not living an autopilot life, living a life that's a lot more trying to be in the present. Yara has sort of grown quite a lot in that 1 year. We have invested so much time and effort into creating this business, and it's we can start seeing the fruits of all the effort that we're putting in. And this is the reason why it was a no-brainer for us to do it the second year. I don't know what happens in the future, but we'll see. But I mean, we don't have any regrets at all. Sure, in hindsight, you could have done this thing or that thing better, but nothing is ever going to be perfect. You'd rather take some action as opposed to having some regrets later down the line where you feel, I wish I did that.
And I think in the end, I'm very grateful to both of us that we have felt the fear and we did it anyway. And this is something we would have regretted if we had not done it. There's no regret anymore, because after doing this, I think we realized that we should have done it much more earlier. But I think the timing is very important. Whenever you are ready, you do it. And I guess one of our philosophy is that everything is figure outable.
We did a video around why we left Australia after living there for over 15 years. We'll link it for you over here. Go and watch that now. That's all from us today. Hope you enjoyed this video.
And we'll see you next Thursday again with a new video.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.